We are finally getting into the fun part of the calendar where we have good pitchers who we know are good in 2022 who are also stretched out, which means we can kind of feel really good about pitching and load up on guys who fit our process. We are at that point in the year finally, and I think that this slate specifically has a couple guys who check the main key boxes. We're going to run through those pitchers, run through what their salaries are, what that means for hitting, and get you set for what should be a fun night of MLB DFS. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and NumberFire.com. My name is Jim Sotis. I am a senior writer and analyst for NumberFire.com, here to break down Friday's 11-game main slate with lock set for 7:05 for tonight. The weather for today in Baltimore for the Yankees and Orioles. Winds are out to left field at 12 miles per hour. That is an upgrade for hitters, but again, keep in mind the pushback porch and left out at Camden Yards, which is now in play for this year. In Cleveland, for the Guardians and the Giants, winds are in from left at 11 miles per hour. It is also 55 degrees, so downgrade hitters, upgrade pitchers for the Guardians and the Giants. In Chicago, for the White Sox and Rays, temperatures just 48 degrees, downgrade batters there. In Kansas City, for the Royals and the Tigers, winds are in from center at 11 miles per hour, downgrade hitters a bit there as well. We'll dive on into the pitching preview for this Friday slate in just a bit, but first, a quick reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, because you get this podcast right as it goes up each and every weekday, which means you have more time to listen to what I say, do your own research, decide whether or not I'm an idiot, and then decide if you want to follow my advice or go elsewhere. You want to maximize that time, you can do so by subscribing to the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Get that for UFC, NASCAR, NHL, PGA, and of course, Major League Baseball, all in the same place, on the same feed. Hit subscribe. If you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. Hey, soccer fans, this season, FanDuel and Captain Morgan are teaming up to give you a one-of-a-kind soccer contest to spice up game day. Introducing the Captain Morgan Soccer Pick'em, a weekly fantasy contest that is entirely free to play. The contest is simple. All you have to do is answer 10 questions about Captain Morgan and that week's soccer matchup. People with the most correct answers will earn their share of cash prizes. Head over to FanDuel.com/free games/Captain Morgan and spice up game day with a free shot at cash prizes every Saturday. No purchase necessary. Must be 21 plus to enter. Location restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See terms at FanDuel.com. Pitching preview for this Friday main slate. Carlos Rodon is the highest salaried pitcher on FanDuel, checking in at $10,100. We got Freddie Peralta at $9,900. Dylan Cease is $97,000. Brad Keller, $94,000. And then Jordan Montgomery, Herman Marquez, and Kyle Wright are the others at $8,000 or higher. Now, Carlos Rodon is on the road for tonight, which could hurt his projection. But Rodon is so good, and he's stretched out, that even on a good slate for pitching, Rodon is my top option, and I feel pretty firm in that. Rodon's facing the Guardians. It's a little bit of a rematch here because he no-hit them 366 days ago. Yesterday was the anniversary of that no-hitter, and he dominated this team last year. And I don't care about that because it's a very different team now than it was then, but it's still a good spot. Cleveland's offense is below average in basically every key metric against lefties, and Rodon is sick. He threw a slider on 40% of his pitches in his first start with the Giants. They are a super smart pitching organization. So when you see pitchers on the Giants make changes, it's noteworthy. And it makes sense because Rodon's slider was amazing for him last year. He had a 40.6% whiff rate on it, according to Baseball Savant. There was just a 138 expected slugging percentage against it, and that was good. But he threw that pitch just 27% of the time. If he's going to up that number to 40% this year, Rodon could go nuts. And he did go nuts in his first start. He had 12 strikeouts in 5 innings. His swinging strike rate was 23.6%. These are absurd numbers. Rodon has a 35% strikeout rate over his past 10 starts. With his changeup usage being down, he didn't throw that pitch at all in the first game this year. We also saw Rodon go 89 pitches, so he's at full strength. We saw last year that Rodon had a lot of length despite his injury history. I've got him projected for 8.1 strikeouts for tonight, which is the most on this slate. And it's enough where I will be aggressive with Rodon, both for cash games and for tournaments, because he is kind of just too good at this point in the year for me to pass up. I want to see if that increased slot usage does carry over. We can go nuts on Carlos Rodon the entire year. I think number 2 should be Rodon's former teammate, Dylan Cease. That's why I want Rodon in cash games, because Cease does have a riskier matchup. But Cease does have the upside to hang with Rodon for tournaments. Cease is facing the Rays, and they're a good offense. They've got a 111 WRC plus against righties since the start of last year, based on the current active roster. So they're a tough team, but they do strike out. They got a 24% strikeout rate in that time, too, and that's what gives Cease upside. But he's also, like Rodon, a very good pitcher. Similar to Rodon, we saw Cease lean more on his slider in the opener than he did last year, and like Rodon, it was his best pitch last year as well. So we should expect an uptick this year if that usage carries over the rest of the way. And we saw Cease start this transition last year. We have a 14 start sample on Cease with more sliders and fewer curveballs. And in that time, he has a 35% strikeout rate. That's actually higher than Rodon if you look at each guy's most relevant sample. So to me, that's a positive for Cease. The other key difference here, other than the matchup, is the batted ball data, where Cease has let up a 43% hard hit rate in this time and a 48% fly ball rate, whereas Rodon, although he lets up fly balls, lets up hard contact just 30% of the time. And that's another reason why Rodon is safer despite being on the road. But both these guys have the same ceiling for tonight, and Cease is at home. So I love both. They're my top 2 guys for the night. If you like Cease more, I won't talk you out of it. I just think that keep in mind the matchup is tougher, the batted ball data not as good, and that would push us towards, or push me at least, towards Rodon as the top pitcher for tonight. For the third guy, looking at a value guy, we're going to target a matchup that blew up in my face last night because I loved Charlie Morton against the Padres. It did not work out. He got rocked, and they put up like 11 or 12 runs. Today, they're facing Kyle Wright, and Kyle Wright has struggled for a pretty long time, but I do think he has a path to a ceiling for tonight at $8,000. Wright in his debut changed basically everything from what he had done previously. Last year, in a small sample, he threw his four-seam fastball 35% of the time and his curveball 14%. Last week, it was 16% usage on the four-seamer and 41% on the curve, up from 14%. He also leaned more on his sinker and basically ditched his slider. So he was a different pitcher than he was previously. The curve is also pretty different than it was before because average velocity on the curve last week was 83.6 miles per hour. It was 80.6 last year and 82.1 the year before. So up 1.5 miles for the last time we had a large sample on Kyle Wright. It worked out pretty well. He had a 15.8% swing and strike rate in that game. He went 6 innings, 6 strikeouts, 1 walk. That did come against the Reds, and they're not a great offense, but I do find it intriguing that he made some pretty key changes. I've got Wright projected for 85 pitches today. That is a decent number for the slate, at least in the value range, and I think he can take advantage. I'm not overly confident because, again, it's not a great matchup. We just saw Morton get bounced last night, and Morton is a lot better than Kyle Wright. So I will have more exposure to Rodon and to Cease, and I'd also rank Freddie Peralta above Wright, but Wright is at least worth a look as a value option. There are some high salaried stacks I like too. So to me, this slate revolves around Rodon. I think he's undersalaried at 10-1. Cease, you could make the same case at 9-7. Don't mind Peralta at 9-8. But if you do want to save some salary, load up at hitter, I think that Wright would be your best option down at $8,000. Speaking of stacks, let's talk about why the value discussion is pertinent. It's because I want to stack the Jays. And that might be tough while using Rodon at pitcher, but I want to try to make it work. And Rodon, again, is not overly prohibitive at 10-1. The Jays are facing Dalton Jeffries today. Jeffries did throw 5 shutout innings last week, which is obviously pretty nice results. I just don't know if those results are fully legit. He had just 2 strikeouts and 2 walks. His swing and strike rate was 6.3%, which could indicate that he had really good batted ball data in that start. But actually, Jeffries let up a 43% hard hit rate and a 46% fly ball rate. And the low strikeout numbers are not a new thing. They date back to quite a while as well for Jeffries. He made 15 starts in AAA last year. His strikeout rate there was 21%. Wasn't a big ground ball guy either. And now he's facing the Blue Jays. They have a 112 WRC plus against righties since the start of last year with a 189 ISO. Obviously, losing Teoscar Hernandez does hurt, but they're still a good offense. There's not a lot of value on this team. I'll say that for stacking, but I will try to make it work here for sure. So they're a great offense in a great spot, and I will be heavy on the Jays. Again, the one downside is that we do lose Teoscar Hernandez here. That negatively impacts everyone here because it's one less good bat in the order. It does at least push some of the value plays higher in the order, though. We got Lourdes Gurriel likely to bat cleanup. The primary guy I'm interested in is Matt Chapman. Chapman is still striking out way too much. It's pretty bad. But Jeffries, again, doesn't get a lot of strikeouts. And Chapman hitting the ball hard when he does make contact. So I'll be high on him here at $3,100 despite his imperfections. Gurriel is kind of like the key value play at 29, but I think that Chapman, also a good play. You build around those two guys, see which of the studs you can get to, make that work from there. But the Jays, to me, are a priority for today. We'll talk about a value stack later that can make them a bit easier to afford. For the second stack, I know we've been stacking the Astros a lot recently, and I know it has not worked out. Believe me, my bankroll is aware, but I'm going to do it again tonight. They're facing Marco Gonzalez, and Gonzalez really struggled in his first start. He faced 15 batters, and he let up 3 home runs, 7 hard hit balls, and 4 barrels across 15 batters faced. And the batted ball numbers are an area where Gonzalez used to excel. He hasn't since the start of last year, though. His fly ball rate last year increased to 48%. His hard hit rate was 37%. He did manage to work around it at that time, but it seems like there's a chance that it gets worse this year. Those results get worse. And we did see a bit of that in the opener with the Twins hitting him really hard. Now he faces the Astros. They've still got a 117 WRC plus against lefties since the start of last year, just an 18% strikeout rate. So I'm going to stack them again because the process says I should. They're facing a guy who's letting up a lot of hard contact right now, doesn't get a lot of strikeouts. They obliterate lefties, have a lot of righties in this lineup. I do think that the Astros, despite their frustrations at times, do make a lot of sense once again. One thing I would note here is the roof in Seattle. It is supposed to be cold in Seattle at just 50 degrees. There's a chance of rain. If they put the roof on here, that'd increase the temperature at least a bit for the stadium. I know it's not enclosed, so it's not going to totally change things, but I'm assuming this roof will be open right now, so it'll be 50 degrees. That's a downgrade of the Astros, but if it does close, I'd bump them up a bit more. I'd still have them below the Blue Jays, I believe, but it would improve their outlook. And again, they got some value guys. We got Yuli Gurriel here. You can go both the Gurriel guys. We got Jeremy Pena still. Maybe Jose Siri slides up there, Chas McCormick. So we got some like value guys in the Astros too, if you want to use them as a value stack to make the Jays work. Now, the other value stack you could turn to here is actually in the same game as the Jays. It's the A's, and they're a bad team. I know that. I don't want to stack them, but I kind of think I should because they're facing Ross Stripling for today, and that should make it obvious why we're here. Stripling is getting a spot start here for the Jays. I'm not expecting to go deep in the game, but I think the A's should be able to hit him while he's in there. In his 2 relief outings, Stripling has thrown a lot of sliders this year, a 38% usage, and we saw that start to change last year for Stripling when he was in the bullpen. Right before he got demoted to the bullpen, he started to use more sliders, and that usage is carried over to this year. Not really working. It's a 10 outing sample for Stripling with more sliders. His skill interactive ERA is 5.28. Strikeout rate is 13%. Fly ball rate is 42%. And that's while pitching in shorter bursts. I'd expect this to be pretty similar for today, but again, he's stretching out. So maybe it would potentially get a little bit worse, and it's not likely to get better for him. Now, the A's are not going to be a good offense this year. Their WRC plus against righties is 92 based on their current active roster since the start of last year. That is the second worst number on the slate. But they do put the ball in the air a ton, and they get a park factor boost with the roof likely closed tonight in Toronto. So it's not often that I want to stack the A's, but I will do it here given that I do need value outside of just the Astros. I think that this is enough to make the A's viable, despite the fact I do not have a very high opinion of them for the full 2022 season. The focal point when stacking this team needs to be Seth Brown. He has a 284 ISO against righties since the start of last year with a 50% fly ball rate. He's got power. He's $2,900. He's very good. So Seth Brown, to me, a focal point, whether it be as a one-off or within your A's stacks for today. Sean Murphy's got some power too. Not totally opposed to Tony Kemp. Fine with Billy McKinney if he bats sixer tonight. So it's not the best team in the world for stacking or one-offs, but I also don't think they're the worst, especially Brown and Murphy, 2 guys I feel good about for one-offs or as parts of stacks for today when you're looking towards the A's. Let's move now to things to watch. Couldn't talk about the Dodgers there necessarily in stacks because, again, I need to find some value. So the Dodgers got shoved from there just because of that. If you are spending down at pitcher and have a lot of room to splurge, then the Dodgers grade out really well. They're facing Vladimir Gutierrez. He has been working in a changeup more because when he first came up, really struggled with lefties. And changeups can help you against opposite-handed batters, but he's still struggling with lefties. In the 12 starts that Gutierrez has made with more changeups, he is still letting up a .536 slugging percentage to lefties with a lot of dingers. So we haven't seen Freddie Freeman blow up with the Dodgers yet, but he could do that here. Not opposed to Cody Bellinger either at $3,100. His advanced numbers are not like sparkling, but they're also not the worst. And he's a low salary, so I can talk myself into Bellinger too. So Dodgers high on that list if you have the salary to get there. And honestly, you might. So maybe I should just bump the Dodgers up, but definitely a team, especially the lefties, I'd feel good about for today. One team that could be a fun contrarian stack is the Giants. They're facing Zach Plesac, and Plesac tends to get good results. So I would guess the Giants won't get too much attention here. But Plesac does let up a lot of hard contact and fly balls, and this is a very good offense, even when they're playing in San Francisco. They're in Cleveland tonight, and again, it's a little bit colder, wind is in, so it's not a great park for hitting, but I think if you want a high upside offense, a very good offense at a lower roster rate, I think the Giants are the team for you for today. I put them behind the Dodgers for sure, outside of the Astros and the Jays, but if you want to get a little bit different, I think the Giants should check that box. Finally, I am excited to see Mackenzie Gore's debut for today, and he is in the FanDuel player pool. He's $6,400. I would temper expectations from a pitch count perspective, though, because he went 63 pitches in his one AAA start before he got promoted. I've got him projected for 75 pitches for today, and I'd like that number higher before I buy in. So he should be fun. It should be exciting to watch him out there. Might not use him in DFS yet, though. It is a very low salary, so it's more justifiable because the salary is so low, but keep in mind the pitch count likely to be low as well for today. Let's finish up here with some dinger calls going into the weekend, hopefully on a high note. For the boring one, I think it's almost too boring to go Vladimir Guerrero Jr., so I'm not going to do that. I think that if I were just picking at random, it would be him. But let's go with his teammate, George Springer. Springer hitting the ball hard to start this year. Not as many fly balls as I'd like, but we know over a long run, Springer can loft the ball. So George Springer, to me, the boring home run call for today. The fun one is in that exact same game, Seth Brown. I'm going to go with him because I like the pop he provides versus righties. And this has been not a small sample for Seth Brown being very good against righties. Already a couple homers so far this year. He's hitting the ball pretty well. So to me, Seth Brown, pretty good option for today in DFS, and also a good home run pick to close out the week. So the homer picks, George Springer and Seth Brown. That is all that we have here for today and this week on the Solo Shop. But we'll be back once again next week on Monday to get you set for another week of main slates over on FanDuel. To get those right as they are posted, make sure you are subscribed to the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, leave a rating and review if you like what you hear. If you've got any questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your MLB DFS lineup for today. Have a fantastic weekend. We'll talk to you once again on Monday. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.